No, I got it. No.
Let the fun begin.
How are you guys doing? I'm doing good. How are you today?
Hey, so you're not came in anymore.
No, I'm in
Oh.
education. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye. Oh,
Good job.
hi.
But I mean, it's just like
How are you today? Doing good. Hey, hey, how are you today? Oh, sorry. Hi, Catherine. I called earlier for the loaner lot. I'm outside the room now. Okay, thank you. Ooh. Mm-mm.
can't revisit it, but
Yeah.
there was a consensus position at the time.
I was
There
in
was.
consensus, yeah, no, I didn't agree. And I stated the same thing as I emailed, that I'm concerned about, what can that's opening.
Or I think, yeah, we did agree with the rest of the statement, and when we heard from paraeducators when they came here, they talked about how they're. So without the setting a minimum wage, the rest is accurate.
My preference would be to leave the rest of it in. As, you know, with a nod to the serious issue about pay of paraeducators.
I can agree with that as long as we got rid of the first.
Okay, so is there a consensus that we get rid of the first sentence? Yes? Done.
Yes.
Done. We take out the first sentence.
I would just simply say, just because there's a big part of the union I belong to that are paras, is that there needs to be a living wage once you take benefits away. And that may not be a specific number that we force down the throats, but like, that has to be something, it's just fluff otherwise. There, you know, there's nothing, there's no teeth here to make it. If we get rid of that first line, it's just, we know paras are really important. And I'm sorry, that's not enough.
So the only thing is, it's not always wage, it's also like total package, like some districts around us don't offer health, we offer health amenities. Health amenities could be between $15,000 to $30,000 added to their salary, while Chester next door to us pays more, but they don't offer.
Right.
So it's not, you know what I mean, it's not always the dollar amount,
Yes.
No,
total package, so
I
don't-
can pigeonhole.
we're just gonna take it out, I think I'm fine
we'll
with
take
it.
out the first sentence, we'll leave the rest of it in,
Yeah.
which is in support of the union position, even though it's not directly, and has
So
no.
when you say the rest of it, are you including everything that was crossed off in red?
I'm including
Just the black?
Because it's like two sentences.
three sentences, paraeducators are the backbone, inadequate pay.
I'm about to the majority, but I still think like once you take out benefits, they need to be making a living wage. And I'm not sure that mandates anything other than a recognition. No, we don't agree that they should be making a living wage. Like, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page there. Like, that means different things in different towns, and this means different things in different states. And different things if you have benefits or not. But
Can I ask, I don't know whose comment this was, but I'm concerned about the removal of the rest of that paragraph, because we did have a lengthy conversation about healthcare benefits and how, you know, it was felt that we could not make a recommendation to mandate them because of the prohibitive cost. I'm just wondering why that section was removed.
That was, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, the final sentence calls on further study of the issue,
Right.
which is perfectly appropriate. But we don't have the answer
Okay, so
here.
want to put that deleted language back in?
I think I think
Yeah.
so.
All right.
That's all right.
Fine
I
with
mean,
me.
paraeducators have said to me that health benefits are incredibly important to them. And Scanlon's office has worked on that, 5 million, and another 5 million. So, you know, going forward.
And this just states that we recognize it's important. It's not saying that we're in.
We don't have the answer. It's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, we did hear and we made the effort to have testimony from paraeducators and special education teachers. We heard their concerns. And to not address it in any way, I think in this report would be a mistake.
But, okay, let's move to gifted and talented. Trying to move along here. Brian, can you talk about what your position is on that? It's the last bullet under, before service, it's the last bullet under eligibility. Number 5.
Yeah, so I had a question with this way the first sentence was structured. About, so what does it mean to remove the current requirements? It says legislation should be passed to remove the current requirements related to identification of gifted and talented.
From the special ed identification process.
Right, we had a discussion about the fact that we don't believe that because IDEA does not mandate identification of gifted and talented, but our state law does. And so we're sort of squeezing a gifted and talented identification process into special education, which has been really difficult for school districts to respond to appropriately. It has required, numerous drafts of, guidance documents from the State Department of Education to try to reconcile that with the actual IDEA identification and programming process. And we agreed, I thought, again, as a consensus position, that we would decouple those two things, that we could still have a gifted and talented identification process required in state law if that's the will of the state, but it does not have to be within the special education exceptional child identification process. Those two things don't go well together. And trying to apply, for example, the procedural safeguards of IDEA to the gifted and talented identification process is a mismatch.
So we discussed moving it over to regular ed, like MTSS.
And again, frankly, I drafted that first line,
why
which
don't we
has
get rid of
been
that?
deleted now, and that was sort of the setup for
Yeah, I didn't
the
suggest.
rest of the paragraph was to explain why we were doing this, and I'm not clear on.
I didn't
why-
suggest to delete it. I had a question about that because if you're reading this, it doesn't say all those things that you just said about putting it somewhere else.
Yeah,
So,
so we were.
like the gifted and talented community would have an issue if they read this, just like I did without hearing the discussion.
Okay,
Because the next part talks about guidance about identification, not like a legal requirement for school districts. Seems like we're removing that completely from existence.
Why did we get rid of the initial language?
I'm not sure.
I don't know either.
I feel like that gives the background to the whole.
Yeah.
bullet.
And, okay, let's put that back in. Let's, change that first sentence there. Should be passed to delink the current requirements rather than to remove.
Or, yeah, just like you said.
You can
separate it.
even say.
Uncouple, decouple.
Yeah.
Decouple. Yeah. What did I say?
He said
D-Link?
He definitely. Peaceful breakup, yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna use divorce.
No.
Just the
D-Link?
second, as we're thinking about that.
Decouple, yeah. Decouple.
Just the second piece of that is around the identification. So right now, currently, school districts have the autonomy to use various assessments to be able to identify based on the curriculum, based on their programming in district, so that it's unique to each school district. And no more than 10% of students can be identified within that process. So there isn't, I don't think the way this is worded, you're asking the state to say you must use these assessment tools to identify. You're just asking for a process that's consistent across districts, but the districts having the opportunity to apply those standards based on their local standards, curriculum, programming.
Right, because a large part of the conversation was how students in several communities are underrepresented, right? So really looking at the process, making sure that every community had a process that really reached out to minorities and every role and those.
Yeah, because I just want to make sure, because that tenant there ensures that locally, students can be identified that aren't compared to districts that, different districts. They have different curriculum, different assessment processes. Okay.
But that the bracketed material is okay with you?
Yeah, those
Process.
were just two things I wanted to just share and provide
Very
some
good.
context.
Gordon,
Onward.
we're gonna get out of here early. Let's move to Patrice's issue about the throwaway language at the end.
Well, we don't talk about this issue anywhere else. Just like identifying a specific number for professional salaries. Salaries and benefits are bargained. You're gonna have compression if you set a minimum salary of 60,000. And if we got to our adequately funding special ed excess costs, districts would be in a better position to make local decisions about, we need to raise teacher salaries to attract people to the profession? Do we need to decrease class sizes? Do we need to increase wages and benefits for paraprofessionals? Or what combination of those matters in our? So I would propose that we delete the language around raising salaries.
So we take out, the task force believes that Connecticut needs a new enhancement act,
Yeah.
and that everything through the increased salary in 1986 was funded through grants from
Yeah.
the state. We take out those
Yeah.
sentences.
Yes.
Sorry, starting where?
Starting with the task force believes,
Okay.
and ending with from the state.
I'm sorry.
Here.
I don't like having, numbers in there. But I can't imagine this task force going forward with the teacher shortage that we have without talking about, teacher salaries and working conditions. You know, just from my viewpoint, but, only one voice, but how do you say that the major issue is, teacher shortage and not talk about, what we know to be the issue, across the board, which is salary and working conditions?
One suggestion, I know we had, I don't think pushback's the right word, but we had a nice discussion about it, is caseloads. That's how you do it. If you restrict, and I brought up IEP hours, but I'm not sure if that fits with what everyone else wants, because, I have school psychologists that have literally hours budgeted in IEPs and they have physically able to give. If you do caseloads, then they by necessity, if there's a mandate on caseloads, which I don't know how you do, would require more hiring without putting in a specific salary, without saying there needs to be an enhancement act. I feel like some of these big drivers, like the formula, changing the formula, will allow districts to make good decisions for their kids. But caseloads is a big problem.
Well, we do have our mandate for the department to
Yep.
to look at the feasibility of caseloads.
Yep.
Um,
But that's, I'm not saying that sort of would solve, it might, would address, if it works, if they do it.
We have a
But if
teacher
there aren't people
shortage.
to hire,
Yeah.
What's that?
if there aren't people to hire, it could prompt more hiring, but if there aren't people to hire,
Yeah.
it solve the issue.
Well, the answer to your point, Fran, is that we're dealing with special ed, and, we're not gonna solve everything.
No, we're not gonna solve everything, but special ed is an integral part of the entire, teacher, force. And I don't know how you just go forward and not mention that it is an issue. If you're talking teacher shortage, how do you not? I agree with Patrice and not having numbers in there. CAPS does not have numbers. But we are saying that, an enhancement act is necessary.
Well, you could just remove the sentence that says Connecticut should now move to a starting teacher salary of $60,000. The rest of it is just historical information about what happened in 1986 and what those dollars are worth in today's dollars.
I'm fine.
It's located in the conclusion section. Should it be up in the services recommendation under one, like the para educator? Specific call out, we're talking about teacher certification.
Yeah,
And should there be a blanket paragraph or a bullet there, speaking generally about teacher pay?
yeah, I think that's a better.
Instead of it just being put in the conclusion.
I'm okay if we take out that sentence with the numbers.
Yeah.
Make it a number.
Well, what are we taking out now?
Connecticut should now move to a starting teacher salary of $60,000.
Yes.
But we're gonna leave in the 20,000?
Well, that's historical information,
Yeah.
right?
And how
1986.
about the parentheticals?
Right, $20,000 in $1986 is worth $56,129 in 2024. I presume that's accurate.
Yeah. And we're not asking, We're not saying anything about a number that the state should move to, but
Do we
So
move
my-
it
a
to the
renewed
section?
commitment.
You're saying it without saying it.
Yeah.
We had the information about paraprofessional
We would have moved,
salaries.
we would have moved the. How much are we moving up there?
I mean, there's a bullet there on, pathways to certification. Even before you get to the paraeducator.
Yeah, how much of this last section we moving up there? Are we moving it all?
Everything after the first sentence, I think.
yeah,
What's the first sentence?
Well, we recognize that the system of special education is in need of improvement, and the recommendations in this report will help but not solve the problem.
And then the last sentence.
And then
we
the last
leave it, too.
sentence, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's actually a really good conclusion.
yeah, the rest of it goes up, yeah,
All right, okay, we got that then.
okay.
Andy, just one quick note on the conclusion. I think we meant to say professional, like instead of professionalism, enhance the profession of special education.
Yes.
It would be correct.
Yeah, that is what is.
Yeah.
Okay,
about words, this is another, but it's in the opening, the task force to, are we the task force to student special education? services?
oh God, that's wrong.
Or just special education?
To study, to
To study.
study.
I knew something.
Study.
was wrong.
Yeah,
Okay, just because it was the opening.
And while we're doing things like that,
I think
bottom of
we
that
should
same
go
page.
back through the whole
wanna do
thing.
that?
yeah, I think so
Around
too.
is
I
better.
think that makes more sense.
I don't want to take this personally, but like everything that I suggested has been deleted. I know who was in charge of this commission. Andy doesn't know why.
Doesn't know what.
Can we just go through it kind of sort of
Yeah.
systematically from top to bottom?
Yeah, so we all.
Okay. Paragraph 1, you change student to study. Anything else?
No.
No.
Okay. Paragraph 2, the big change is we're not talking about the additional views in here. Everybody else, our options to bring them forward.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, although we did sort of, again, offline, have a conversation about some recommendations that were made for potential supporting materials that could be included, not dissenting statements.
Yeah, my concern with that is, I mean, if I could do a bibliography of the reports on special education from various institutions I have on my computer from the last year. It'd be, 25 of them.
Yeah.
I just think it's an endless task. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Including yesterday, well, not yesterday, tomorrow's release from Cadre showing a 20% increase in due process violations around the country last year. So I'm not inclined to do that. But before we go through paragraph by paragraph, should we put in something raising, a real red flag about excess cost reimbursements this year? And what's happening because of that?
It's huge.
It's huge and factual. and-
everywhere.
It is, and it's going to obviously be something that the legislature is going to be paying attention to. And if we're doing a report now on special education and we don't say, we
Wrong direction.
Right.
we've got to.
We've got one sentence that you added in there, but
Where?
I thought you.
Right.
Yeah.
And is it,
See, do we have the data though for this year yet? Is it receipts?
I don't have all, no,
They released it though, to every district.
I mean, it was sent out individually.
Yeah, but they don't have the total how much. They
But
don't- they have to have the sums, they did the math for us.
They sent it in their letter, this,
Yeah, but there's two requests, aren't there, from districts? So
There's a
they're-
secondary one
Right,
coming
right,
in March.
That usually goes up, so our percentage goes down.
Right, so.
That always-
we'll-
Right, but like last year, at this time, they were able to say like we spent $230 million last year. This year's got that at 270 we spent.
Yeah, and
280.
we'll know that probably what, in March? Final number?
Yeah, well, we know the number now.
I don't think that they do. I might.
They have to, no, the reason I'm saying they have to do it is they had this pot of money and they gave me the percentage I'm gonna get back. So in February, they gave me my first percentage and then they recalculated it again and adjust, but and it goes down again in, March.
Right.
Well, I'm not talking about, putting precise numbers in. I'm talking about,
How about the sign though?
raising the signal that we've got a major crisis taking place right now.
Yeah.
And that, special ed is, this is a serious attack on the special ed system.
So you can strengthen that last sentence if you want to make it stronger, but you have the sentence in there.
In recent days.
Yeah, recent days thing, but yeah, that's not really,
No, but
that
Should
should
be
be.
a conclusion.
Okay. Are we talking about putting additional language into the background section? Is that why you want to raise this now?
No, this is just for the big topical issue, that's all. I was trying to get the big issues out of the way first before we go through the wordsmith it.
Okay, well, I do think that we need a little bit of wordsmithing in the section on excess cost reimbursement, but if you want to highlight that issue at the beginning of the report also, because we have language in there about how heavily we rely upon local property taxes to fund education. We could put something in right now about what's happening with the decline in excess cost grant reimbursement up front, and then hit it again later on.
That's the suggestion that you made that I like.
It's not gonna make me feel better about all my other suggestions.
Yeah.
being deleted.
Okay, so what your suggestion is like the after fourth.
I think so, or
Yeah.
is it after 4?
No,
Or is it a part of 3?
Or is it part of third?
yeah.
Third, I would
Where
think
was-
third,
We were
yeah.
talking about funding there.
Okay, just tag at the end, I'll do about the excess cost crisis.
Yeah.
I think it should be in the introduction. It's very serious. I think it should be said that the reimbursement is in the 60s, the lowest it's been in how many years?
Oh, since I've been doing this.
Since I've been-
15 years. yeah, over
15 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some are in the 50s.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the richer districts are at 59.
Yeah, so I would say reimbursement is the lowest it's been in as long as I've known. I mean, I used to complain when it was 78%.
And the only things, you sent this out, you said 261 million. In your original email, it's 231 million in the report. Do you know which one?
It's 260.
261?
Yeah, it's 261.
Oh, well, let's go paragraph by paragraph.
All right, I'm just sorry. I just when I read your email originally.
Yeah.
All right, maybe through paragraph 2, I think we can agree on paragraph 3.
And we all have a break at noon because lunch is here.
I
Okay.
just want to say in paragraph 3, shouldn't it say subcommittees?
I'm very confused. It's probably like Latin rule or something.
Where?
Where it's
Yeah.
Why is it plural?
Establish 3 subcommittees.
I'm already
Oh,
showing my
next.
edification
Yeah.
then. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So for a fancy, like, yeah. like, agency.
This is a reversion to a previous version of this document because we corrected support to supply.
Yeah, we
Right.
did.
Oh.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah,
been
so the
corrected
qualified
back
addition
or
is-
copied.
What is that? 231.
Which could also be why
So
we
you're supposed to
are not-
hire reimbursement.
It could be.
It could
So
be.
that's the difference.
I mean, I'm voicing it as we go, so.
Okay.
yeah,
All right, fine.
okay. It's supply, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
support.
Supply.
Yeah, okay, that's paragraph. Next paragraph.
Yeah, that's.
Hi, guys. I just want to ask, when everybody's talking at once, could you not talk over each other? It's super hard to understand if you everyone could just take a breath between. Yeah, super hard online. Sorry about that.
It seems like people were just speaking out loud. No one was actually having a conversation.
Oh, okay.
Second thing aloud.
You got it back to sheer volume.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
Oh, my gosh, okay.
I'm not laughing at you, Susan.
No.
It was just
It
the audio.
was really
funny.
loud. It came across like, whoa.
Sorry. No, I'm super loud. I'm trained to be loud, so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, So I don't know what page this is, but second, school districts lack the resources to effectively meet their special education needs. In 2021, the latest year published 35.5% of Connecticut's school finances came from the state. Is that what we're trying to say?
Yeah.
No, 35% of local school expenses in Connecticut.
Little funky.
We're funded by the state.
35.5% of total K-12 spending comes from.
At the local level.
Okay,
K-12.
why don't we say K-12?
Status abounding.
Oh, no.
Careful stuff in there. Thanks, Jen. It would really hurt to get the different color pen.
Funding for local education, for local?
It's all public, so it's like local
Yeah.
charters.
Oh,
The
okay.
original report said in Connecticut, 35% of school finances come from the state. So you just added the year, so we could say in 2021, in Connecticut.
Yeah.
35%, 35.5% of school finances come from the state. Does that work?
That's clear.
Yeah, that's good.
This was far lower than the national average of 45.8%, and then there's a citation.
And just to verify, this is full school financing, not just special education funding.
Right.
We could also say places Connecticut in the lowest percentile. But no. But.
Well, the concern about that is that the data is so old, you know,
Yeah.
I wish we had more recent data.
Well, I guess the
So I don't want to
point,
make too big a point about that, but we are low on that.
the point is legitimate, though, that this isn't a statistic that pertains to special education funding. So I guess I'm just wondering, is this just part one of a statement that we want to make about the inadequacy of special education funding? Says we lack the resources to effectively meet special education needs. And then says for all school funding, we're only getting 35.5% of all school funding from the state, which means that the rest comes from local sources, but the rest is, again, for all students, not just special education students. Is there something that we can say here that's specific to special education funding?
There is no state funding to support specialized ed costs.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's
But
what we
that's
need
But
to
do we
Say that
move
right
the,
there.
and do we move the excess costs
I was
crisis
Right there.
to two?
Or, do we combine this, that, do we just keep going and
Yeah,
say
but
Connecticut heavily
Divide
relies
second and
on
third, yeah.
local property taxes to fund education? Because that's also sort of a general education, like here's the larger backdrop statement.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Look for more of Patricia's corner of this, which is that we then say the only direct funding for special education is the excess cost grant, and we have an excess cost grant crisis. And then we go into lower property taxes.
Either way.
And the crisis would include the funding thing that you quoted.
I think Lisa's point
I like
about
Lisa's, right.
no
Like,
funding
that
for
was a
special
good
ed.
clear sentence,
Yeah.
just simple.
Okay.
Because people, say it again, so.
Well,
You said, Michelle, you go from the context of all the funding to, and then in special
Yeah.
education, there's none,
Right.
except. I don't know, I won't say.
Well, that's
It's a
the,
dedicated method.
that's the issue, whether we're saying there's no special ed funding or the only special ed funding is excess cost.
Specifically for special.
Huh?
I mean, specifically for special. I mean, money's fungible. So
Right.
you get state support that is generally provided to your district, the district can extend those resources how it deems fit.
Right, we say that later when we endorse the change in the
Right.
rate.
Yeah,
But if you conclude the sentence with saying, this is the little couple of years ago, right? this is where we are now. There is no unique funding for special education. The only stuff that does go to special education is the ECS. And here's the current data on that. It has gotten worse. So we gotta be still at the bottom rung of percentages. You don't have that data.
Should we, in full transparency though, there is an IDEA Part B grant, right? That is a flow through source of funding from the
Right.
federal
But that's
government.
not
It's pathetic, but it's there. So should we add a sentence that says that? Because that is flowing to districts.
Does the state control that at all, or is it supposed to?
It's a formula.
So you.
We manage it
Control it and then
and,
set it up.
yep,
It's truly from the federal government.
correct.
But it's so low.
Yeah, and it really varies by district, so districts with Title I schools have. higher
6%.
Not like.
But we should be able to say something that encapsulates that we're only receiving, 6% of special education funding or whatever it is as flow through dollars from the federal government. I don't know what the percentage is right now, but
6 seems a little high.
6 seems high.
From the federal government?
Yeah.
Usually around 4.
4.
It's
The
higher
promise
now
was
because of
40.
the-
And
At
that-
one point I was using 13, but it seems like it's
Yeah.
gone down even lower than.
Down.
Yeah, I can get the exact percentages, but originally 40% was promised.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's.
And I,
It's like
it's important
12.
to say that.
Well, on national level, it's 14.
It is 14?
On the national level. Yeah.
But in Connecticut, it's
They get a
4.
curve.
Is that what we're saying?
Lisa, do you know if we're the only state that doesn't have direct funding for special ed?
We are one of a few.
The Council of State Governments has a wonderful
Yeah.
chart which shows you exactly how everything's funded, and then
Yeah, I
that
mean, I
question is
think
not quite so simple.
Yeah, and because
Yeah.
different states fund things differently.
Differently,
Right?
so-
They have a weight or they
Like
do
the
an excess cost, but it's a lower threshold, or there's all different.
Yeah, when I drafted this, I was trying not to get too much into the weeds.
Yeah.
And I was trying to be very, very general level, and so, we can add pass-through funding.
We can give data on flow through funding to the district, just.
I think we
cumulative.
just need like a general
Just a-
percentage.
just a per-
so
just
that
a
people-
sentence,
Yeah,
like-
exactly.
And
It's one-
then we go
one.
into the fact that the only special ed funding is excess cost reimbursement,
Right.
and the excess cost reimbursement is proving woefully inadequate.
Yes.
And it's been going down, it's just not this year.
Always.
I was gonna say always.
Been even worse.
It's always been.
It's always, it's just worse.
Yeah.
No, since 2012. For some of you, that's a way.
Maybe originally we're not allowed to do that, so like, it's been a while.
Did they say anything specific yesterday about it, Andy?
In the joint Senate House thing, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it was mentioned, but it wasn't the central focus.
Okay.
Neither in the education committee nor in the press conference. I think when Chairwoman Khan listed her major issues, it was one of the major issues that she listed.
And the special education committee is gonna be having, is meeting tomorrow, right? And
Tomorrow.
we're gonna have a
Organizational meeting tomorrow.
presentation From OFA.
No, the OFA is not tomorrow.
I thought that it was.
I get the sense that it wasn't tomorrow. There are 2 hearings being scheduled. The first one is OFA briefing them on how it works, and the second one is the task force reporting on its findings.
So I'm sure that OFA, when they do their presentation about funding of special education, will go into the excess cost grant.
And the federal money.
Yeah.
I keep hearing from any of the legislators that we've met with that they will make good on excess cost funding. I don't know what that means, but, and I certainly don't know that they will compensate for this year.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
All right, let's go to third. On that cheery note.
well, isn't third now part of second?
Well, I thought you decided not to
Okay.
consolidate
Yeah,
because you were gonna go into
There's
the
just that
problem with
transition
excess
sentence.
costs.
Okay, fine,
grant
fine, we'll do that
reimbursement in
second, okay.
And then you're going to third, which is property taxes.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there's a misunderstanding or, earlier version problem with sentence 2. Because I thought that the inequity means that Connecticut spends far less to educate students of color, multilingual learners.
Yes.
No, that was changed
And
because that was
students in
cha-
poverty. I thought that was,
changed because of Brian's suggestions there. That he.
Yeah.
So that it read as if all children of color were in these poor districts.
Right, Just that those population of students also reside in wealthier towns or access schools in the wealthier.
Is there any way to change that to communities instead of cities? Because there's some
Yeah.
pretty low wealth
Yes.
You're right,
communities that aren't cities.
Lower wealth communities?
Can we retain the first part of the sentence about the inequity, though? Rather than just saying there are higher percentages of students of color, I think it's important to
that
point out that it
sentence.
is an inequity that needs to be addressed.
I mean, you could say this inequity means that there are higher percentages of students of color, multilingual learners.
But it is that Connecticut spends far less to educate those students.
Well, I mean, in some districts that have higher concentrations of students of color and multilingual learners, they do spend higher per pupil. But you're supposed to spend higher per pupil when you have higher concentrations of students with need.
Right.
So getting away from just saying that they spend less per pupil is a good idea. Like, they should be spending much more in order to overcome all of the student needs that are in their district.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I just had a-
you would say this inequity means that there are higher percentages of?
Or this
You have
inequity
the
results
local-
from the fact?
You have the local property tax, which vary from town to town. And then it jumped to, this means Connecticut spends less on students of color.
That's fair.
So,
That makes sense.
Okay,
Because there's a higher percentage.
well, I was trying to
Get away from
understand that connection when I read it, big transition.
Yeah. Like the property taxes. I
well,
mean,
the next
it-
sentence
yeah.
says this inequity in funding translates directly into lower achievement. I don't want to use it twice, I guess, if we're. There's an inequity in funding that's translating
Yeah.
into an inequity in terms of lower achievement. So
I don't necessarily like the notion of lower achievement. That puts onus on the students. The fact is that students are not receiving access because of that. I think it's inferred, but we have to put lower achievement.
would opportunity be better there, Tiffany? Opportunity?
Right, maybe lower opportunities or something like that. Something.
Could we say reduced resources?
I like the opportunity
Opportunities?
or access of something.
Yeah, so I was thinking like.
Access to resources
Yeah.
or.
For maintaining the achievement gap, I mean, I know we don't want to use that word, but I mean, that's one of the concerns, right, of the committee.
Well, I think
It's not even just.
we're using
achievement gaps.
opportunity gap.
I agree.
normally understood as now, opportunity.
It's an opportunity gap.
Right, not sure I'm entirely happy with that, but.
Maybe that it further
Can you
exacerbates
say
the
that
opportunity
sentence
gap.
again?
That's nice.
Lower
That
opportunity?
would be nice.
You like that?
I don't like it. I like the wording.
Oh, you did, Michelle didn't hear it. We said something is something that further exacerbates the opportunity gap.
This inequity in funding translates directly into,
Exactly.
further
Oh,
It's not translated.
further exacerbates
But it exasperates what?
the opportunity gap and access to resources.
I don't think it's used.
You love it?
You never
I
exacerbate.
think you get rid of the translates
Yeah.
phrase that.
Yeah, so it would be the inequity in funding further exacerbates. Starting from the top of the sentence, this inequity in funding further exacerbates the opportunity gap and access to resources. I need to say something about on the part of
And
By students indeed.
okay, by students in need.
access to running resources.
The learning resources?
Yeah,
Or educational resources, I don't know.
yeah, educational resources.
Look like a black building.
I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to reconstruct this sentence.
Can you read that sentence again, please?
This inequity in funding further exacerbates the opportunity gap and access to educational resources by
I think you
students.
have to say reduces access because otherwise the beginning part of the sentence doesn't work,
Okay.
right?
Reduces access to education.
That's funny. Oh, wrong place. Okay.
Okay, so we're taking out further exacerbates. the opportunity.
Yes, we're exacerbating the opportunity gap and reducing
Okay.
access to resources.
And then, we didn't get to it yet, but the 18.2% is not accurate.
Okay,
It is also the case that lower wealth communities have a higher incidence of students with disabilities eligible for special education services.
Continue to.
There was a concern about the numbers, the percentages.
Oh,
that you
no,
went to.
that's okay. Lisa was explaining that was just an average. That
Got
was okay.
Of the five, I'm guessing.
It wasn't the fact.
Are we okay with that last sentence about the 5 big cities?
I mean, is it okay?
Ours is.
If everyone's okay with it, I don't like the idea of averaging.
Yeah, me either. That's what I was,
Yeah.
that's what I was
We have,
saying
like,
too.
some of those districts are above 20, others are below
Ours is below right now.
18, below the state average.
What is the point of calling that out specifically? I think the paragraph made it.
sure.
well, the point of calling it out is that, these low wealth communities have a higher incidence of kids with disabilities.
That's actually
That
not
was
true.
Not all of them, but as a general matter.
But not all even of the 5, Brian said, right?
It's not true.
So now you're, yeah.
That's why I was,
Maybe.
there are smaller districts that have pretty high percentages.
There certainly are.
It's a problem.
But
All right,
But
so
typically-
should we stop after, just delete the last sentence and just stop after the lower wealth communities have a higher incidence of students with disabilities eligible for special education services?
That's not true.
But that's not true, like,
Waterford
not true.
Waterford's over 20%. So that's, sometimes having wealth needs you identify for, because you have the resources to have IEPs. So I'm not even sure after the opportunity gap is
And
that.
not only that, and like even when people have asked me about the conversation, I mean, not for nothing, we're making a presumption in some regard that having a higher percentage is a good thing, when to be honest with you, it really isn't. We really need to look at our good tier 1 instruction. So I just say that to say, I think the notion of percentage, I don't necessarily like that we have there because there's a lot behind percentage. But I think the complexity of need, maybe there's something that we capture around the complexity of need, right? So students with IEPs, even in large urban districts, if there's not access to resources, it's compounded with, need, right? There's more complexity of need, maybe, something. But I just think we should stay away from the percentages. There's more behind a percentage. Unless we want to explain all of that.
Okay, I guess I'm hearing that we would just stop the paragraph after the sentence that we just constructed and take out both of the last 2 sentences.
I do think it is a fact that, the higher need districts have more students on special ed than average.
That's not a fact, though. I'm just telling you.
Not on everyone.
Specifically.
So it's not a fact for everyone, that it's not a fact.
Right,
So
well,
we can't,
Right,
that's
we
not,
can't
we're not
say that
saying
it's
it in a
not.
factual way.
It
If
just,
we're-
does it
Right.
deliver on anything?
Right, is it enhancing our argument? Is it?
I mean,
right?
total numbers of
total number.
IEPs is correct,
Yes.
Right,
Because of total
but not
numbers
percentage.
of students,
Right.
right?
Right, because.
right, total numbers, total numbers make sense.
Yes.
Because that is high.
Significance.
Right, that's significant.
Second to last
So it could
sentence
be-
holds.
I think like, Brian, I think that's a good point if you want to think about impact, is that the volume, right?
The volume.
Even though the volume of need within those districts is quite
It's
different.
high.
I think if we look at the percentage, then that gives a whole different story, but the volume is huge,
Mhm.
comparatively speaking.
Well, and I also think your other point is really important, which is that if you sort of add up English learners, kids in poverty, that's, all those things together
Children who are duly
compound to make it
identified.
much bigger issue.
I think that's the bigger issue though, and that's the complexity. So I think what you're trying to say is that kids are not more likely to be disabled in those
Yep.
communities, but because of all the compounding factors, they
Yep.
might have higher needs
Yep.
for the variety.
Do we say lower wealth
No, I like
communities have a higher incidence of students with high levels of need? as described by multilingual learners, the description that we have above.
That's fine. Makes more
I think it would make sense to look at EdSite at the high needs percentages to be sure they're effective.
Oh, it is.
It is, yeah.
What's that?
The State Department defines
High
high
needs.
needs.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Students with disabilities, right?
Yeah.
Multilingual learners and free and reduced.
yeah, that's true.
Right.
Can we just say there's a greater number of students with high needs, period,
Right, sure.
In those districts.
in those
Also a
districts,
greater
period.
number of
I,
students on a.
I feel much more comfortable saying
Also a
that.
greater number.
Yeah,
of
greater
students
number
on
of
IEPs.
students with, yeah. with
Right,
students
not
with
percentages,
disabilities, But the
it's
percentage,
numbers.
but that is true.
Okay. So
Well,
we're
why don't we
deleting
leave that
the-
sentence, and pick up the new language of the.
But I think we say the same thing, like Brian is saying, if you want
And
to. have
then
it,
on the previous sentence, instead of anything with special ed services, comma, multilingual learners, free and reduced lunch.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going with summarizing that by saying students with high needs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are we doing this in defense of the request we eventually make for the increase in ECS funding? It's because it ain't just one, it's a lot of things.
Right.
But we're focused on special education being weighted so that those other
Yeah.
populations
Our
can get the rest of the money other than.
Right. Okay. Worth?
Oh, good.
Want to break for lunch?
At least don't give you a working one.
Give me a working one.
Please
Yeah.
make it work.
Yeah, let's,
Thank you.
just get lunch. Let's have a
Yeah,
working
please,
lunch.
yeah.
Because I have a NSBA call at 1.
How should I-
Okay, then let's just,
Okay.
please grab lunch. It's right outside.
Be precise. So it's-
I'm trying, but my,
Good, you're.
my
You're
grammatical
right, you're right,
sure
you're right,
is.
Writing the final. Yeah, but by,
Well, tell them that you can't.
Yes.
Forget.
I'll email, yeah, I did. How are you doing, Mr. Grove?
Good, how you doing? Doing fine yourself?
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know what it is.
How you doing? How's the shoulder?
How old are your kids now? They're like in college?
Yeah, I got all kids, yeah, my kids are in college.
They are?
My youngest is senior in high school.
Really?
I got a graduate of college at UConn, I got a junior at WVI, and I got a senior in high school.
And,
I'm ahead of you.
Really?
How's your son now?
I didn't realize.
My son is good. He's a freshman at Hampton Hall.
Oh, nice.
He's tall as ever,
Okay.
They had to
but you know, he's like,
rent an apartment in.
Is he enjoying school?
Huh?
Well, man, he enjoys it all.
he loves Hampton Hall, but he's having relationships.
Oh, okay.
Look, Mike, really? 14?
Yeah.
This is what this is?
They have
We're
relationships.
talking about relationships with the kids, like, really, is that what this is?
That's what it is now.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they got
Well, you've
feelings
already
now.
been there and done
Yeah, they
that.
got feelings now, like,
I know.
our days. Yeah, our days, this is lie,
You just,
right? They didn't want to hear it.
you just suck it up.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
Parents
everyone
going
has
to Boston with
feelings.
them?
Yeah, sorry. Right, who knows, right? You're like.
And my son goes back and forth, and he's at home with Vivian, but
Okay.
I don't think we realize
Nice flavor.
how difficult it's gonna be, and, interesting.
For other reasons.
I didn't know about long.
Yeah.
But, we're using core blood, so we're using blood. And.
Oh, somebody else's blood.
The newborns.
Really?
Newborns, but they've had worse exposed to that. Now, and so they, that's why you can go back to school till next January. When all is said and done, he's gotta have all those inoculations.
Oh.
You know, all those
No.
shots he had as a baby, he's gonna have them all over again. But, you know, the frightening thing is, that he's gonna be very, very, very sick. We've already been told he'll have a feeding tube, he won't be able to eat because the chemo that he's getting. Bone now is getting ulcers. It's, we just have to get through this next week. I think we'll be okay, you know. Right now, it's like, Yeah,
Is this the phase where you're not able to see him?
I can't see
Yeah.
it. But, you know, I'm helping out with Vivian as much as I can, you know,
Yeah.
she's 6, and she, spends a lot of, which is great, you know.
Yeah.
They also have puppies, you know that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I remember the puppy.
Yeah, they have
He's
Martha,
home with-
yeah, I'll show you.
Vivian.
So Martha is the puppy and, you know,
A real puppy.
oh, yeah,
Dog.
a lab.
Oh, yeah, it's chewing up the whole house.
Yeah, he's chewed. This is him when he was
My puppy
leaving,
isn't even, every
children's
meeting I'm
hospital to come home for a
I'm
couple
like,
of weeks.
"Excuse me, I'm sorry, the puppy is.
Amazing, but, you know, yeah, I mean,
Kind of
she's
puppy.
gonna chew up everything,
This
but
is her.
she's beautiful,
so
but
Oh.
she's an extra stressor
She's
right
very
now.
cute.
Right.
Very,
So
oh, yeah,
cute.
lab puppies.
And
are a lot.
her name is Clementine.
They're a lot of work, so, I mean,
And in the
it's-
winter, yeah.
So my
It's
puppy is like,
you know, I think what I said to my son Sean, I said.
Oh my God,
it's
pros and cons, like,
you
she
know,
can
You don't know.
get in anywhere.
You don't know
get out
Dana.
of
Children's.
Right. We've had this kind of dog my whole life,
Drill
but
at
this is the
Dana
first
Farber,
one that
and
I'm sure 10
okay.
Cavalier.
I think they'll
Cavalier
be
Charles,
amazing.
Yeah,
I do.
but I rescued her,
But-
she's really
But it is
flexible.
also
She's
just
a really
totally
hard-
amazing what medicine is trying to do here.
Yeah, here he is. Here's. yeah.
Is there a rescue organization specific?
I wasn't being.
There are,
heartless, but, you know.
some
they
old broken
got the
Cavaliers
dog
you can
on
get,
it.
which I was fine with.
Totally.
But Then I found one that
And in
basically rescued
October,
a
the
puppy
dog
mill.
was ready to come home.
So she came from a puppy mill and
Right.
and I was.
We were just so
puppy mill.
lucky.
Van.
That's my puppy.
My husband got one of those, tiles
Jody
for parking.
Flew.
Oh, yeah.
And my son
$1,500.
put her in the bathroom for a minute while he was getting Vivian out of.
But I feel like she's.
In another bathroom.
Yeah.
A huge hole.
This is a particularly needy lab.
Yeah, so, you know, I think we just,
How about you?
you know,
You surf?
I think when we have the known, we'll be okay.
Does your dad have any surf? I don't know why I think he.
For right now,
Has
it's,
a-
it is scary. It's very scary.
So mad now.
Yeah, I know. He's okay. I know.
Oh,
His grandson?
Yeah,
Okay.
here he is with his dog.
Work for school?
Oh.
Yeah, because,
He needed
I'll
a
be
dog.
good.
He's good.
Yeah.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
He needs
The
that.
dog.
When I graduate, I did
Yeah, I would not be,
I
I
work for Trout, computer program.
never had it.
We like, so.
I would not be able to move out there.
The 8-year-old and the,
Got a place with his friends.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Army.
Okay.
Yeah, they rented the house, 3 guys,
Right,
they
your house?
rented the house.
I
go
can't
there?
because I have to go there because
Yes.
I have Louis, who's a French bulldog, you know, and Louis is
I still do.
wonderful. But Martha will kiss her, you know.
I should've.
Martha-
Yes, like, I gotta get out of it.
Everyone's guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you just end it
Why don't we just
after
end it there?
extend policy?
Yeah. And take out in spite,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Do we need special education is essentially specially designed instruction? Can it just be special education is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I corrected Andy on that remedial business. We had a little disagreement.
Yeah, yeah.
This is that Brian's language.
Right.
Then we have, one would expect that a successful special education program would over time reduce the achievement gap. Do we want to change that again from achievement gap to opportunity gap?
But I think we also have to take out words that are subjective. Like successful, like what does that mean?
Between students with disabilities and those without.
Effective, yeah, effective.
Can we say programming instead of program? One would
That
expect
successful
effective
specialized
successful special
programs?
education programming.
I would say an effective special education. Not successful.
And effective, yeah.
Yeah, I know that's also subjective, but kind of the language we use.
Special education.
Sounds good.
And that's more about the delivery of the programming versus like the
Yeah.
achievement of the person.
So rather than an effective special education program, it would be effective special education programming.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we using the Nate Levinson quote?
The reason I use that is, we originally had language about the gap increasing. Brian questioned that. I did a lot of research online and found that there's enormous controversy about that issue. And so I thought, Nate's quote was sort of captured it. I did not point out that Nate was a contractor for the state.
Yeah, no, that's okay with that. There definitely is a gap. I mean, there definitely is a gap. The gap was reduced during the pandemic,
Well,
actually.
that's a little overstated. I just looked at those numbers, Brian.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Slightly, yeah,
And partly because the achievement by non-disabled students went down.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's not really decreasing.
Do we, the quote at the end, does it, I just go back to, is it strengthening or does it take away from the paragraph? And do we care that it's from 2018 and we're submitting this in 2025? Does that matter?
I mean, I don't think you could add, I would have ability to be just strong up paragraph.
Well, we're saying, no, if we have there, we're saying you would expect the gap to decrease. We're not saying anything about whether the gap is decreasing or increasing.
Well, eventually, we're talking about funding for, so we can get more, right?
Right, but if you just
Like, I don't
say,
even know who this
this
person
is the expectation, you then have to say whether or not the programming that we're currently providing is meeting that expectation. I think Andy had originally just closed the paragraph with a simple sentence saying the achievement gap is growing, not declining. That was challenged. And so this seems like a more,
Now,
there has to be a closing saying whether or not we're
Yeah.
going in the right direction or not. And this says we're not. Otherwise, why do we need more money?
Right.
Is this a superintendent who, when he was superintendent, was he in Connecticut?
No.
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 Otherwise, I'd expect it to be included in.
No, he's a national figure.
Oh, you like a superintendent, like,
And he's worked in Connecticut as a consultant.
What city was he?
He is currently working in Connecticut as a.
He's consulting now. He's working for the state on two jobs. So he's also working at 50 districts.
Oh, maybe.
I think.
I even
I don't know
thought.
what you're talking about.
It's fine, I mean, if it's the quote we can find, it's the quote we can find, I don't,
I'm there.
it's anecdotal, right?
Right.
Right.
I mean,
No.
It's not that.
It was really hard.
It's not.
I was like, they want me to fight it. Get it.
Yeah.
Aren't you the finance person? It's gotta be, I don't work with finance.
Okay. Moving on, the recommendations of the task force are directed at ameliorating these four concerns: staff shortages, funding, inequity, and effectiveness. All good?
Yeah.
Finance recommendations. We don't have many changes suggested there. Any issues with paragraph 1?
No.
On page.
Oh, I like your speed.
Yep.
Any issues with paragraph 2?
Just want to make sure that we're crossing off the right things.
I think I suggested inserting that language except as otherwise noted below, because we said the task force steered away from recommending funding limited to special education services. And then we have this whole paragraph on excess cost reimbursement, which
Yeah.
is limited to special education services. So that's why I suggested inserting the language except as otherwise noted below.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Keep it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The education cost sharing formula is constructed to direct the most money to the neediest school districts. Any issues there? Okay, we're up to excess cost grant. I'm not sure what, I think I suggested the language that is now struck. From
Not sure everything is structured correct.
Not the
Struck from the
second
record.
part, but the first one, reduce the current threshold for, I wanted it up front, I guess, in the first sentence, saying that we are reducing the current threshold from 4.5 times per pupil expenditure to 3 times per pupil expenditure for students receiving services within their home school districts.
And we did agree on it.
Right. And
But
we
that
did
all
agree on
seems to
that.
have gotten moved
See,
to a
it's still there
final
somewhere, yeah.
paragraph in number 2.
Yeah, that,
So I don't understand why it got moved.
well, two different issues. Paragraph 1 is about full funding. And paragraph 2 is about these two thresholds.
I thought we were burying the lead a little bit by splitting it out that way. But I will defer to the will of the group. I think I did suggest striking the language that starts with Connecticut leads the nation in out-of-district placements to the end of that section. I suggested the language that struck through that starts with once the threshold expenditure is met, reducing the threshold from 4.5 times per pupil expenditure to 3 times per pupil expenditure for in-district students will provide further incentive to districts to develop quality in-district special education programming for the neediest students and enable districts to have a reliable source of funding to maintain such programs in district for the long term. That was my summary of why we are recommending the differential between 4.5 times for out of district students and 3 times for in-district students.
No, I read that. It's somewhere else, right? Where I read it.
It's at the bottom of the paragraph on the next page. It's in red, not crossed out, setting a lower threshold for excess cost reimbursement for in-district programs based on.
Yeah,
The non.
So it got moved a little bit.
it's there again, but I think putting it here is important.
All right, so do you think it's more effective, I guess, to split it out into 2 different paragraphs with 2 different proposals?
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 different proposals, right?
Yeah.
One proposal is full funding and the other one is these 2 thresholds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On is there.
That makes sense.
And the only thing I think it's 260 instead of 231.
All right, where is that?
In the middle.
Fiscal year
First
2024.
paragraph.
Yeah.
260 million is
Yeah.
the number?
260. 261. I mean, that's what I've heard. right?
I know, I just took what Andy gave, when you sent the email, it was 260 in your email, I think, the other day.
I thought it was 261.
261 number.
261, I think, to fully fund, right, but 231 according to the tiers in the statute.
The current gap.
Yeah,
Because when people say fully funded, there's two different things they could be defining it as. Fully funding up to the statutory tiers, or fully funding 100% for everybody.
and we're saying get rid of the tiers and fully fund.
Right, so I think that that number should be 261.
I think
Yeah. That's like just a little percentage.
181's correct for the appropriated amount, I assume that's.
Last year, yeah, that's what it is last year.
All right, I'm not sure that we have, if you only use the language that is not struck through in paragraph 1, I'm not sure that it's clear that we're also saying get rid of the tiers.
It says right here,
Yeah,
elimination of the tiered system.
That's for elimination.
The last sentence before the striking begins.
So the 12th line down,
Okay,
You know,
11th and 12th line.
We just move that sentence up, so it's with the,
but it is, okay, proposes elimination of the tiered system and that all municipalities be reimbursed for the full amount of their excess special education costs. Isn't it still once the threshold expenditure is met?
yes.
Because we're still
Yeah.
saying 4.5 times is the threshold or 3 times is the threshold. So it's not literally all excess
No.
costs above.
4.5
the
times.
Expenditure,
You gotta make it 4.5 times first.
Right.
right?
So
Yeah.
instead of giving us 64%, you're giving us of what we can claim.
Keeping, so once the threshold expenditure is met.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last sentence of the first section, in recent days, on the next page, school districts have learned that the shortfall for 24-25 school year is even greater and hence reimbursements to districts will be an even smaller percentage of the excess costs incurred by the district. We want to again say their current estimates indicate somewhere between 50 and 60% or 55 to
59 to
65.
62, right? Right,
No, well, there's some with 64%, yeah.
all right, so 59 to 64, but that's for, just for the first batch.
Right.
Right? Be a second batch in April, which would be,
Yeah, but the
In March.
percentage very rare. The monies will change, the percentage of reimbursement.
You say less than 65%?
No,
It probably should be each district instead of the district at the end. That's not that big of a deal, but.
Okay. Are we okay with the paragraph that starts with further?
The only thing that I would like to just say, not that I'm not gonna agree with the 4.5, is that based on all the surrounding states on cases, going to request 3.5. Because Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, they're all between 3 and 3.5.
Or where we have 4.5 times,
Right,
Concase is going to be advocating for 3.5 times.
correct.
And the reason for that is because it would be in line with
The
surrounding
surrounding
states.
states, correct.
I mean, I don't know that we want to change our proposal at this point, but
No.
if anybody wants to.
It
talk
was more
about
just a letter.
we have absolutely no idea what it would cost either.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't afford it.
since you mentioned cost, I did look up the select special ed committee meeting tomorrow. It's not just organizational, they do list an OFA presentation.
Oh, they do, okay, they're also moving some bills.
Sorry to interrupt. Okay, sorry, Brian.
No, that's okay. The percentage there, so Connecticut students outplace has dropped from right there. So they are published figures. I just wanted to mention that. I think the 2020, so OSEP creates data dashboards And the last one that they have to show the percentage of outplaced by across the country are from 2020. We report and publish subsequent years, but they haven't taken that data and then put it into their dashboard. So that was my point. Just to highlight that that's from 2020, 2021, which you did. But then the last 3 years, we went as a state from 6.8 to 6.4 to 5.88. So
Okay,
they are,
if they're published CSD figures, can you get us a site for that?
they're in our annual performance report that we submit to. So the 5.88, we're submitting on February 1st. So that last one is
Is that right
to
now
be
unpublished?
published,
Yeah.
but the 6.4 is published.
All right, right now I have 6.8 to 5.9. Is that?
That's across three reporting periods.
Yeah.
So we went 6.8 to 6.4 to 5.88 in our last three reporting periods.
So do I need to change this or not?
I think that's accurate.
I think it's captured, it's just the unpublished part.
Take out the word unpublished.
Yeah, you could say according to CS.
Yeah.
Okay.
What it does point out is how the cost of these programs has gone up.
Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that we're spending so much more on out of district placements with fewer out of district placements is pretty amazing.
We're okay with the rest of that paragraph?
I had just put a comment, I don't think it needs to be added there, but just, parent placements are a component of that figure.
You're talking about unilateral placement.
Yeah, just that. I just wanted to bring it up, but I think in the context of the out of district placements, parents have a role in the PPT process, but also there's an aspect of unilateral placements.
Which is very evident when you have conversations with other states.
Mhm.
That our system and our outplacement numbers are higher. The parental involvement piece.
We've been talking about that at the State Advisory Council to see if we could extract some type of data to see if we can disaggregate that. We don't have anything great right now as a tool to be able to delineate, but it's a factor.
In my sense, unilateral placements are a tiny fraction of all of them.
It would be a percent, yeah, a smaller percentage.
Very
But
small.
Is it enough to mention?
I don't think so. I brought it up.
It's a lot to explain if we mention it.
Yeah, I don't think for the legislature that would.
Okay.
But just the focus, obviously, in district programming is for the schools, but parents need to be on board with that and, trust the programming and be involved in the decision making. So it's not only a school district effort, I guess I would say. But we can, I don't think we
There's no
need.
I don't think that's-
data for it, so I would hope to not include it.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah, I don't think we need to
in
include.
the recommendations, when districts are working, collaborative process.
Okay. I don't want to put in something that's going to take us off into a different
Right.
track here.
It's gonna take us into that burden.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So moving to paragraph 3. Certain students with acute physical, behavioral, or educational needs are placed at APSEPs because individual school districts lack the resources to develop programs to educate them within the school district. To further reduce the need for outplacements and permit education of students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment, we make 2 recommendations. Are we okay with that paragraph?
I mean, one of the things that you mentioned in your paragraph 4.5 is part of that too, right? To try and encourage people to develop programs in district.
Yes, this is a separate recommendation.
Yeah.
This is the
Right,
pilot
but it
program.
relates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my objection is that it's too small.
Well, the State Department is also have a recommendation, right, of 14 million for the pilot program and 4 million for capital.
It's not part of the CSDE, but it was overall, it's part of I think the governor's bill.
For special ed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it is in alignment.
it's, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And we're also, I think CAPS has, we haven't put a number in, but we're also advocating.
Any changes to paragraph 4?
Sorry. Sorry, back to 3.
Oh.
I haven't said much. I've been on.
Go ahead, Catherine.
Next. I'm too old either. No, I think, again, you just have to be careful about how we talk about outplacements, because for some kids, that is their LRE. That's just the only thing I want to just be like, I don't know exactly how to say it, but I just want to say, yes, for a lot of kids, it's going to allow them to stay in district, which would be a more appropriate fit for their LRE. But it doesn't, I think we're conflating.
Always because districts lack resources.
That's right.
More because that's the appropriate program. Or
Yeah, just want to make sure we like condition.
If we said, rather than least restrictive environment there, if we said in a less restrictive setting, did that address that concern?
I think it's all relevant because really the least restricted environment is in one system.
Maybe louder.
So
That's
if you
kind of what I'm
say,
trying to say.
but if you say least restricted environment, you're inferring that they have the capability of being in district.
Right.
Because that's their LRE.
Right.
Right? I know it's a weird way of looking at it, but that's kind of that's how we define LRE.
Yeah, there's an underlying message here
Yeah, but
that
it's
these decisions are being made on
financial
financial
needs instead of student.
instead of the student.
Oh, right. Instead of, it is.
It is.
There's big pockets of kids that is the issue.
Right.
There are some pockets that there are some people that wouldn't understand the nuance of this, would think that, okay, in district, always better for every kid. And even though we've made a lot of comments as to why it's better for the vast majority of kids, I just don't want to conflate those two things. People are kind of oversimplifying.
I've generally found, at least this is my experience, when talking to policymakers, that it's important to emphasize that the IDEA contains a least restrictive environment mandate as a floor for the discussion. Because once you understand that, then you get to, okay, this is why we need these programs to be as close to the home school as possible. If you don't start there, so I think that's why the decision was made to use least restrictive environment there, because that is the IDEA mandate.
When I would say the
flip
same.
it to add that at the beginning of the sentence, like say something like the IDEA has a mandate to educate students in least restrictive
Right.
environment, and then restate the problem.
Because I think when we talked about this before, the conversation about this was that oftentimes if there are, and I agree that there are some children where the LRE is an out of district placement, but the whole conversation we had, I believe, we talked about it so that it's not a funding conversation, but it is about really LRE, right? That to the extent possible, that we are trying to educate students in district. So I think Michelle, to your point, I'm more or less taking a long way to say, I think you're right.
So if we start the paragraph with the IDEA includes the mandate to educate students in the least restrictive environment, and then the rest of the paragraph, does that make it sort of put it in context a little bit better?
This is at the very beginning after 3.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think, again, I'm nitpicking, but I think.
Because we're saying, here's the mandate, we're saying, but some kids are being recommended for outplacement when maybe they shouldn't, because we have no program in district. And so now we need to go back to the drawing board and provide funding so that more programs can be created in district.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think that's fine.
Okay.
I think that answers it.
Okay.
Do you think so?
Okay. 4. I think I had suggested the voluntary working group language because I think before it just said APSEP
Should
school
develop,
districts
yeah.
should assemble a group to develop a model contract. I found voluntary working group
Yeah, no, that's right.
more
Andy
accurate.
said no.
Yeah.
It's involuntary, so you're trying to say.
Yeah, like most of these.
You are drafted to.
I may be an involuntary.
He's like, you're definitely, you're in every group.
Oh, wait, what did I just do?
What is the casting?
Yeah, I just, no one has her knowledge. Yeah.
We have to finish.
Sorry for you.
Okay, can we go on to 5?
Question about this section.
Okay.
That statement, some states have rate approval systems, but the task force believes the cost of establishing and operating such a system might well exceed any savings. I don't think that we've done like an analysis that that's actually true. I know, Andy,
Yeah, I'm not,
you think that, which is okay, but like, can we just say that the task force questions whether such a rate?
well, that's why the word might is in there, but yeah, task force, I don't know, is concerned, no.
Is concerned that the cost of establishing and
Might
operating
be.
a system. I think I had inserted the language general rate approval system and also if required to review and approve every routine rate increase might well exceed any savings. So we had a conversation in which we said, you know, if every time an APSEP or a RESC wants to increase its tuition by 1% or 2%, we don't want to incur expenses associated with reviewing every routine rate increase. It's only when the rate increases appear to exceed the cost of inflation that we would like some kind of checks and balances to be inserted. So that was the reason for my additions there, which I would like to retain.
That's fine, that's fine. I mean, you know, the Massachusetts system, they do have a due schedule each year of what each program costs. I don't know if they do a complete review or not, but they do publish a schedule.
So unstrike, unstricken.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
I think to address Lisa's point, we don't have data that says
That's
that
right.
the cost of operating the system will exceed any savings. We're just concerned that that might be the case. It seems reasonable to assume that that might be the case. So I'm going to change that to is concerned.
There was a virtual.
Any other changes to that paragraph?
Can you tell me what that sentence is going to say again?
It would say, some states have general rate approval systems, but the task force is concerned that
Okay.
the cost of establishing and operating such a system, if required to review and approve every routine rate increase, might well exceed any savings.
Okay.
But then suggesting an alternative.
Yes. So this is where we get into, if the APSEP or the RESC for the same level of services to the same student substantially exceeds the CPI, because remember, there was also a concern that some of the more substantial rate increases that we're seeing are because of the addition of substantial services, like a paraprofessional had to be added, or 2-to-1 staffing had to be added. That's a substantial price increase, but it's not on the base tuition. It's because of a specific and identifiable expense. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Are we concerned at all that publishing the
That's the next paragraph, yeah.
costs are going
And
to?
Karen has an issue with that.
I do too.
Okay, so the little paragraph, the task force further recommends CSDA collate and make publicly available information on the tuition rates for each APSEP and RESC program. The information will permit school districts and Connecticut taxpayers to assess the cost and reasonableness of charges of each program.
What's your concern about making public the cost figures?
So my specific concern is, student confidentiality, okay? Because often we're asked for an FOI document that asks how many students you have at each school, or, you know, and I don't want public entities questioning why we're making decisions to send students to more expensive schools than cheaper schools. Like, in all honesty, that may be something that comes up, right? Because we're frequently getting FOI requests for things like that. Where, you know, how many students you have in private out of districts, how many you have in public out of districts, why, you know, so I would be concerned that if we had that available, I'm not saying it will happen, but the possibility of that occurring is there, right? And I would hate for anyone, not hate, that's a harsh word, but I would hate for it to be, projected that student programming choices are made on rates as opposed to quality or the right fit for the program. That would be my concern.
And my concern on the other side of that is that I think the public disclosure of those rates would serve as downward pressure on those rates. And since we have no other cost control mechanisms really here, I think that would have that effect. But I'm not hard over on this issue. I understand the other side of it. And my own view is that, rate setting would not be an effective way to do it. And this, investigating increases over CPI would have some effects on the margin. But if our goal is to sort of drive down the cost of these placements, I think public disclosure of those numbers would have that sort of effect.
Like shaming.
Not shame.
Exactly. That's kind of
Where it comes from.
I don't know if it's shady, like, sometimes you get charged, different districts get charged different prices, at least no one get charged the same price for the basic service.
Well,
Aces is offering, Aces Wintergreen, or Aces, Whitney is offering this X amount of dollars to go there. Now everybody in New Haven County knows here's the basic tuition price to go there.
When there's a charge made.
And there's all the fee, but it's just basic
Right.
tuition.
So there's basic tuition and then the services are on top of that, or the
well,
services?
some are a la carte, some are all in.
Yeah.
So they- so
Some
the
are
numbers
American
wouldn't
plans,
be
some are
so
European
much
plans.
Because they're
It's based
aren't
on
apples and oranges.
the individual student, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I know that the services
So-
are, this, but
And different programs have different.
Right, but it's
Right.
different in terms of letting districts know how much a program is, right? So if they were required, I get a little bit concerned about putting it on a public website as opposed to, I get both sides, I do. Because it is nice knowing, we did have a rescue, let us already know about the tuition rates for next year, so I can use that for budget. But I'm a little concerned.
I think it's a decision for the task force to make. I see both sides of this issue, and
What do we accomplish by putting that?
That'd be my question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure.
is this provided to superintendents already?
No,
no,
no, that was.
districts negotiate their contracts.
So is it,
We don't negotiate.
if the language,
It would be great if we could negotiate.
if the language said it would be provided to the superintendents of each district rather than.
Right?
That make a
I
difference?
would love that.
Once the superintendent has it, it's a public document.
It could be FOIA,
Yeah.
but like, it's not gonna be on
The website.
the website,
But
You can get it.
but they could FOIA it anyway.
Yeah, you could
Public
have
money,
a,
right?
but I
They
don't
could
know,
request a
providing
rate of
it
any
to, I
program
think it's
they can
important to
have.
provide it to the districts. I'm just not sure why we would go.
Public, totally. I mean, you're right, like, it is public once it's given to the districts, but
So
I-
two reasons have been given, transparency and downward pressure
Downward pressure.
on tuition rates.
Yeah.
Is that enough to counterbalance the concerns that we have as a group about the potential negative effects?
well, if it's just given to the district, is there the same negative effect? Or is
Well,
there
there's
things that would-
also no downward pressure. She just gives it to the districts.
Except that the district would.
Because Amy just said she doesn't negotiate. She just pays the rate they ask her to pay.
Well, at one point, we had a discussion about whether or not, I mean, we have to keep in mind, we're asking here for legislative action on
Yes.
whatever it is, right? So what is the legislative action we would be asking for? And at one point, we had a discussion about whether we wanted the legislature to mandate that APSEPs and RESPs provide tuition rates by a certain point in the year. And there was a significant concern about that recommendation.
I think it was
An estimate, right.
Well, but actually, what the State Department of Education is now proposing is the actual rate has to be given by December 31st of the year before. Which, I think is really, really bad policy.
That'll be very hard.
Good.
In case anyone there from here is here from the state.
Do we want to remove little paragraph 2? Is that where we're at this point?
Well, I mean,
At this point,
They are getting kicked out.
they get kicked out of these places anyway at this point, so I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I'm a little salty with the whole conversation. I don't know if there's any legislative action that's gonna do anything at this point.
Yeah, that's not what
Just
we're
to be
talking
honest,
about,
if
right?
you were, I think you brought me to where I'm thinking, I don't think there's any legislative, it would be nice because there is great disparity between what people are actually charging, which I think that was kind of the point, right? To get to a place, and I think to Andy's point, like pressuring people. But what's going on out in the world is that there's no seats anywhere and children are getting removed from these places. So I don't know whether or not, even, you know, if we're going back to your question about legislative action, what that actually would be and how that would actually help us in.
Right now, the legislative action that the report requests is that the State Department of Education collate and make this information publicly available.
I think to the district.
Collate and make available to districts the tuition rates for each APSEP and RESC.
Isn't that FYI?
Yeah, sure.
It's all
Yeah, but it's
FYI,
different.
like, right,
It's
you
still
know, I
different.
mean, like, thinking FYI, you just couldn't get, the
Yeah.
price of school like FYI, but not the kids tuition,
But it's still different than putting.
putting it online and having.
Yeah.
So the downward pressure may be applied by the fact that now District A, District B know what the flat rate is instead of District A being charged to my District B unless their friends.
Yeah.
As long as there's a disclaimer in it about what it includes and what it doesn't, you can put,
It
you can
should.
list all of those
Yeah.
tuition rates, but you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples.
But I think that
Right.
would be inherent on the placements that you want to say, but this includes X, Y, or Z, right? It's a full meal plan.
It could be a long list. I mean, now you're talking about a table that's got a lot of footnotes too.
You want to do that to be
Yeah. I
competitive.
mean, I think it's hard to, who defines reasonable? Right? I mean, I think that's hard.
No, but I think if you just, from the first sentence, say, provided districts don't have the qualifying statement underneath. They'll know what to do with it.
Keep sentence 1 and modify it to the task force further recommends CSDA collate and make available to districts information on the tuition rates for each APSEP and each RESC program. Delete sentence 2. That's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing.
Because
Yeah.
then you wouldn't have to say the sentence you don't want to say.
Is that acceptable to the group?
Reluctantly.
It's gonna take us in a whole nother left direction. But I'm gonna throw it out there. I wouldn't feel, I'm almost wondering, right, when I'm just talking about what the need is actually out there. Is there some way, outside of the transparency piece, is there some way of giving some incentive to out-of-district placements who maintain students or who may make more seats available for students? Something. I don't know, like that may be like the same way that we were looking at how, you know, there's a possibility of looking at funding to create, you know, more districts, more programs in district. I'm just wondering if there's some way of doing something in the same spirit with out-of-district placement, because that's a real problem.
It is.
And I see that's gonna be multiplied over years.
But our general policy here is to reduce out-of-district placements by
No,
building
I
capacity in districts.
understand that, but just going back to Catherine's
But we're
point,
not,
right?
that's not our.
Like if I'm
policy.
thinking like a place like Ben Haven, you need that. We can't, there's no program I'm creating like that. Like there's certain programs that
Create more options.
we're just, there's no way, right? So I agree, definitely, we're talking about reducing and reduction, but I think to the point of Brian and Catherine are saying, there are some kids where their LRE is not in district. And I think that's where there's a struggle out there about, you know, where we're placing students. I don't know, I'm just thinking about that in the same vein. If there's an opportunity to do something with the legislature or something with either maintenance or something with out-of-district placements, if we're asking for transparency on this end from them, is there some other incentive on another end?
Thanks, Well, increasing capacity, retention is probably a little thornier, but increasing capacity feels like we're using the same principles.
Well, these are private, institutions,
Yeah.
private organizations.
Yeah.
Just think incentivize it,
I don't know.
Well,
What would the
some
What would the
are,
legislator do for a private entity?
Yeah.
Now I get you for rest, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe
for the
rest-
regional
For
program.
the rest, maybe for the rest.
Speaking for the online people, we are talking over each other.
Oh, sorry.
And I don't.
I'm sorry.
Is the pilot program going to be available to RESCs also? Did we say that, or did we just say school districts?
It's school districts. You said school.
Do we want to make that available to the RESCs to increase the possibility that they would also have increased capacity?
That region wants.
I wouldn't want them to be in the same category. Looking
You
for
would want
dollars.
a separate thing.
They
Because they're
should be
sending those
separate.
kids out.
Yeah, they should be, because our kids are getting, they should be, I think they should be in a separate category, but there should be another standard because we're in public schools placing kids in rest and those kids in rest are still getting kicked out. So there has to be something, a higher standard or something. than a public school, you can't.
Can you
When
just
you say
explain what kicked out? I don't understand, because I'm not a title, like, what does it
Oh,
mean?
they
to
just
be
get
kicked
kicked
out?
out.
That means you don't go
They
here.
don't go anymore. They say you're
They
you
just
can't go
like-
here.
They
Here's a
just ripped it
PPT,
from
you're
under
out.
you.
Kid is out, out.
They
Out.
determined that
For
we're
a
no
PPT.
longer
Out.
able to program.
Yes, oh yes, that's a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So that's not, it's not a PPT decision, this is just.
No, they're fucking-
Like you're saying, Steve.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm sorry. We're on our last day
I'm sorry.
of this.
Sorry.
Can I put that in the parking lot, Tiffany? And if we go through the whole report that we have written and so we can reach consensus on that, and then if we have time, we can come back to your
I'm
suggestion.
sorry, I apologize.
That's okay. It's a good thought, and also I'm worried about time.
Yeah, but 1/3 done.
All right, eligibility recommendations. I didn't see any markup on paragraph 1, but does anybody have any final concerns about the developmental delay category recommendations? No concerns? Okay. Paragraph 2. This is our recommendation to update the eligibility guidelines and tools and provide training on the eligibility guidelines. I suggested, and I don't know whether this is on the next page, second language acquisition,
Yeah.
distinguishing between second language acquisition and language delay, or multi-language acquisition. Is that what we meant there?
We did between, yeah,
We don't need English language acquisition?
English.
Can't we just say language acquisition?
That's probably the-
It just said language acquisition
And
there, and
language delay.
I wasn't sure that was clear as to what we were talking
Oh, I
about.
see what
I
you
know
mean.
what that means. I didn't write that.
I don't
But
think
I
it's
see what you mean. Because there's some children who have language acquisition needs versus a language deficit or challenge.
Right, and
that
that's the-
sometimes get identified in need of special education.
And that's what we were trying to avoid, Tiffany.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes,
It's a
that's-
huge issue.
It is a
Yeah.
huge issue.
Yeah, but is there a language acquisition
So if we
that's
could put
separate from
English
being
language-
multilingual?
No, the point is that sometimes there are, like, I'll give us an example. We used to have children who would come in, I don't know, from Puerto Rico within a period of time, and folks would look at them as they had they needed special education services in the area of language, versus the fact that really truly what the issue or concern was for that student was a language acquisition issue.
Right.
So sometimes I think people are convoluting what's language acquisition versus
Right.
disability.
That's clear. What I'm not sure that will translate to the legislature.
No, it
approving
won't.
These recommendations. Are you okay if we say English language acquisition?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Any other concerns about paragraph 2?
I just hope you do something about the cultural competency.
We said eligibility guidelines and training should have special emphasis on cultural competency and should include training on distinguishing between English language acquisition and language delay.
Yes.
We thought that was very.
But what is the legislator gonna do with that?
It's a request to include legislation that requires the State Department of Education to engage with the eligibility guidelines and training tools on a regular basis.
And the metric would be looking at disproportionality as it relates to identification, maybe, nothing, oh.
The CSDE will include that information in their training materials. The legislature is being asked to enforce the regular revision of the eligibility guidelines and training tools on a 3-year schedule. That's at the beginning of paragraph 2. Okay, anything else there? We move on to paragraph 3. Monitor and audit restraint and seclusion incident reports to ensure that the laws regarding restraint and seclusion are being complied with. Reporting of incidents is accurate and consistent.
The previous version was confusing, so I changed it to
Okay.
consistent across all settings where students are placed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Any other changes there? paragraph 4, no markups.
No markups, this was one of the ones that I had put something in from, folks I talked to, was just that. I think it was Haven, someone said that MTSS was not the appropriate program for their area, and they were hoping for more choice of robust programs or approved programs.
But MTSS isn't a program.
I understand that, but it is dictated as a program in many districts, so that's just, I'm repeating what's been said to me. We don't, as a district, we don't do that much.
Yeah, MTS is just a,
Process.
Approach.
it's an approach.
Framework,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yes,
Right.
well,
Okay, I said, I just
So
said it aloud.
maybe if we take away the word program, since it's not a program.
So the second
Maybe we could say-
sentence just says MTSS. The first sentence says MTSS, RTI, and SRBI. Do we want to make that consistent?
Yeah,
Yes, we could do that.
That would probably make it more palatable, because it's
Yeah.
really all things.
Although it's sort of repetitious.
I mean, SRBI and RTI
They're
are
the same thing.
Yeah,
All three of them are the same.
All of
Well,
no, MTS, I mean, at least from a council perspective, it is different, but like, I don't understand why Connecticut needs to rebrand things and use one letter more, like RTI should, but that's aside.
we did, yeah.
And our goal here is to make sure that we're getting it right by the students who we're actually identifying, right?
Exactly.
And we want to eliminate the word program after there.
I'm just
That-
thinking
that would-
about the metric and program.
Second sentence, legislation should be passed. to ensure that-
MTSS program.
Wait, you're talking over me.
Oh, you're right.
Maybe we'll have a review.
Legislation should be passed to ensure that every school has a robust MTSS, RTI, and SRBI
process,
procedure.
process, framework.
Process.
definitely not one.
Yeah,
Could we just say that it should have an intervention program, not a specific one?
I guess my preference would be to use the terminology that we have identified here, because early intervention is a broad category of all kinds of things that are not necessarily MTSS, RTI, SRBI. It includes other stuff that is less
It's
well
often
defined,
confused with birth to 3.
often confused with birth to 3.
Yeah.
And the MTSS, RTI suggests a framework.
Number 5.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. We already did.
We did
We did 5
We
already.
killed 5 already, so
We did 5.
Roman numeral 4.
now we're 2/3 done.
Services. Okay. First bullet point, multiple steps need to be taken to broaden the pathways for certification. Are we using the right version of this one?
No, those,
I think so.
no, I think those 2 deleted things are supposed to be
Yes.
back in.
Supposed to
I
be
would agree.
Yeah.
these things. Okay.
They go back in, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Andy, would you write in this one, the non-aligned one?
No.
All right, second bullet point, review standards for para-educator eligibility for employment. Any changes there?
Just a comment again from my crew was just that we don't want to make the pathway to being a parent educator more difficult. We obviously want them to be skilled in those things that they need to, but that was the only concern.
It already is more difficult if you're a district get Title I money. So if you're not Title I, you could kind of hire any pair you want.
Yeah.
There's no requirement.
So,
So if
And
you're
it's
in
a-
Title I school, kind of, there's a whole bunch of requirements they gotta pass.
So at the beginning in paragraph 1, we start with the statement, multiple steps need to be taken to broaden the pathways to certification, including removal of some of the existing barriers. So this is a bullet point underneath that goal to broaden the pathways and reduce barriers. Do we want to restate that within that bullet point to say review for reducing barriers to access?
I think I'll let that question sit before I make.
I don't think there's a need to repeat it.
No, you don't have to repeat it, it's up above. That's fine.
Brian, do you have a different idea?
I was gonna make a different comment.
Okay.
Sorry. I was gonna say, so the standards, so I think it should say review the federal standards because they are federal requirements.
Okay.
Um,
There are no state standards?
the, we have guidelines, but we don't have requirements around eligibility for Title I schools. That's a federal requirement. The state board, and then in the second part with the para assessment, State Board of Education identifies the assessment tool that will be used for that standard. So
They also
I'm not sure
determine the
what,
pass score?
what's that?
They also
Yeah.
determine the pass score?
Yes. So I'm not sure what the legislature would do with that. Yeah.
Well, my concern is that 6 months from now, we may not have federal standards.
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to point that out, that this, if this is for, you know, something that the state would be tasked for, we would still have those challenges because of it, if the federal requirements still existed. So just a point, I think you can keep it, but
Okay, I know we
The
had a long
legislature
talk
know that.
about the paraeducator assessment and how we
Yeah.
thought that it needed to be modified in some way in order to broaden the pathways for eligibility. Are we saying that that's not
that's
possible?
a state board of ed.
Yeah, that's all right.
So it doesn't require legislative. Doesn't mean the legislatures can't look at it or.
Should this be prefaced with a require the CSDE to review the federal standards for paraeducator eligibility, including the state paraeducator assessment?
Well, we do have this verb to review, but we don't have a subject as to who we're asking to review this.
Yeah, no, I was just pointing out, like,
That's just maybe it ought to be CSA.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I would not be inclined to add the word federal.
Whatever standards they are.
To broaden, or we can include that language or.
But we said we didn't need to repeat it in every
Didn't
bullet
say,
point, but
okay.
if you want to, we can. Okay, require CSD to review the standards for paraeducator eligibility for employment, including the state paraeducator assessment. Yep, and keep the language about different roles. It makes sense to have differing standards for different. Next bullet point, we've already reviewed that. We're taking out the first sentence and we're retaining this stricken language.
What was that, Michelle? I'm sorry, I may not have been here. We're taking out the 25.
Yeah, they're taking out the set minimum wage for $25 per hour for full-time paraeducators.
Because I think we did, what was it replaced with?
We're not replacing that with anything. We're just starting the paragraph with paraeducators are the backbone of the special education system, and we're retaining the stricken language at the end of the paragraph.
Is there a possibility, I know I'm getting irritating here, but, or continuing to be, I should say.
Surprisingly, not irritated.
I can change that. accordingly. But thank you. That makes my day.
You're not working hard enough.
Continue, as we say, to identify cost-effective solutions that provide a living wage. That's literally the end of the.
Task force recommends further study of this issue to identify cost-effective solutions to provide.
That can still provide.
That will provide a living wage.
I mean, it's asking for research, right? It's not mandating.
That will provide.
I think it would make certain individuals really happy. I mean, everyone should get a living wage. But
You don't think everybody should get a living wage? Is that what your position is?
that my position is not everyone should have a living wage.
Okay, good.
I'm actually the conservative on it. I think it's my side.
Yeah.
Do we have consensus on addition of the language that the task force recommends further study of this issue to identify cost-effective solutions that will provide a living wage?
Yes.
Yes.
Susan has her hand up.
I think we're pro-life here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Susan.
Hello, everybody. The line about set a minimum wage of $25 an hour, can we just say set a competitive wage per hour for full-time paraeducator?
We
No?
can't do that because not all districts do a per hour for full time.
Okay, all right. Yeah, living wage has definitely been brought up again and again, especially when we had the paraeducators here.
We're doing it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last bullet point, no changes are noted there. Anybody have anything on that?
Next.
Paragraph 2,
Nothing on that.
I have nothing good here, any changes there?
Is the increased state funding. I had added, an email about, adding the designation of the parent training information centers so that it's clear that CPAC is the training center and not like an advocacy center. Because it is something that's federally funded and
Read the language that you want.
Yeah, tell me.
so,
what-
all right, so, increased state funding, it says of the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center to
Yeah.
permit CPAC, so increased state funding of Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, the Parent Training Information Center.
Parent Training Information Center.
Thank you.
Now, you're not the only one in the state, right?
Yeah, we are. Camp's the CPRC, it's the community one, so we are the only one in the state.
Each state has one designated.
I know that, but I wonder about the status of AFCAM, which is, you know,
Yeah, they're a different, parent center. They're a community one in Hartford, so we have different, federal designations.
Anything else on that? If we add that more money? Paragraph 3, caseloads and workloads.
I added that additional language there, resulting in additional duties, because Brian was questioning how the shortage of paraeducators increased caseload. That's just
It's really the workload, right?
workload, yeah.
And it could be, I guess, not necessarily caseload.
No,
but
we're not
you're servicing students,
Yeah,
right?
but yeah, we heard that loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the email that I sent the other day said that, shortage of parent educators and special education teachers. Because while what you added is, I believe that's accurate, Andy, I think also having a shortage of parent educators, certified teachers also increases workload.
Okay, so we need shortage of para-educators and special
Yeah.
education
Yeah.
teachers.
Right.
Well, probably special education teachers first, because the additional phrase only applies to paraeducators.
Yes.
That's right.
Is it enough then to say resulting in special ed teachers having to assume duties that would normally be performed by the paraeducator?
Well, that modifies paraeducator.
Yeah, but it doesn't modify the,
No.
special ed teachers.
So you have
So,
something, then they're not doing any of that.
yeah.
It kind of works both ways, as well. Like, both, it's like chicken and egg, like,
Right.
less paras affect special education teachers, less special education teachers affect paras. It's not,
Yeah, I was
it goes
thinking
both
that,
ways.
I was thinking that fewer special ed teachers result in higher, caseloads.
Right.
Could be that too.
Does.
I don't think it has to have the.
Can we say resulting in higher caseloads and special education teachers sometimes having to assume?
Yeah, yeah.
Like if you lose a special ed teacher, now suddenly you're the only one who's qualified to do the testing and the assessment.
That's what I'm
taking on these
saying,
duties
yeah.
that only you can do.
So you have high, I mean, I've heard from so many people that there are higher caseloads. I think that.
Or a workload, right?
Or workload,
Where you're
right.
taking on things that only a certified person can do.
Yeah.
And are we specifically addressing, I know where you're getting at, and I totally agree with it. That inclusive of sort of the related service folks too? Or is that?
Are we saying educators?
Yeah.
I know, we're not saying teachers, but you're right, is that clear?
What is saying teachers, but that was my.
Oh, well, it says special educators. Is that teachers or is that
Educators.
teachers and related service?
Oh, it's in the underlying lines. I'm sorry. So yeah,
So I was gonna add in shortage of special education teachers and para-educators. Is that still the language that you want there,
I
or?
never passed that.
I think special education educators.
Just special,
Professionals?
Special
education
educators?
professionals might be more catch-all. I mean, everyone knows we're talking about all these groups, but.
Yeah.
Well, the
We
legislature.
know.
Right.
I mean, we, no, not their field. They might not know. We should assume they don't know.
Okay, that's better.
You say it so nicely.
I am gonna capitalize task force.
Yeah. I'll have that changed.
And Any other changes there? Are we good with the rest of the paragraph? Woohoo, paragraph 4.
We did 5 already? Oh, sorry. I was on removal 5.
CSD program of professional learning, mandated training for paraeducators. I think I had suggested the language that is struck through there.
I think you can assume that.
It's okay with that?
Yeah.
It was an explanatory,
Yeah.
why we're doing this thing.
It's necessary.
You all this stuff.
Underline them all.
Excuse me, I don't like this. We had a lot of discussion about that, why?
I know I was added at the last minute and, you know, maybe my views don't carry much weight.
No, I'll explain what happened. It's Brian's fault.
That is an excellent.
It's okay. All right, the legislature should test CSU with its learning options for micro-credentialing. And yeah, I think I changed paraprofessional to paraeducator. Okay,
Yeah.
we're good with that?
Yeah.
Paragraph 5, I have no comments on it. Do we want to say anything else about generative AI? I think this is where we felt like we didn't have enough time to study this, and so somebody.
I guess
else
the only
did
question is,
it.
we didn't have time to submit, why we even,
That's what I was gonna say. I don't think
Because it was
we should include
specifically
Don't
part of
put it
our
to
mandate.
it was specific permanent,
Yeah.
then I guess we have to have the line.
That was the problem.
Oh.
I mean, you know,
Otherwise, we wouldn't mention it.
AI probably tasked us with the line.
I'll ask ChatGPT what it wants to stay on.
And we, yeah,
Well, I do think that the issue of generative AI in special ed is a distinct issue.
Yeah.
Generative AI from
Absolutely, that's
AI.
great.
This group is not gonna solve that.
No, but acknowledging that
If we part of the mandate acknowledging it's absolutely fine, I didn't realize. That.
Yeah.
to be continued.
Okay, and we already
Primary task force.
reconstructed the
we fixed that.
conclusion.
Is it possible to get like clean printouts now?
No,
No.
10 minutes?
No. What with a period at the end of this? That's all.
No, well, let's.
Would you like to try to read my handwriting?
No,
You've been so kind to me, I would try.
What I propose now is that Michelle makes these changes overnight, that we vote right now to accept these, so we can issue the report tomorrow on schedule. We will not release it. Michelle will do this tonight and send it out.
Oh, Andy should do it since he did all the strike throughs.
I know, that was Brian.
That wasn't Brian, that was Andy,
No, it's,
because he's not gonna like what Michelle writes anyway,
no,
so.
I liked all of Michelle's comments. And then we'll, you know, we won't release it until like noon tomorrow, and if anybody has a real problem with what Michelle does.
Where are we releasing it?
What?
Where are we releasing it?
I think we're taking a final print copy and delivering it unto the speaker. And press
That'll be
it.
your job.
I'll do that, I'll be up there.
That's your.
Are the tri-chairs presenting to the special education group?
Were you paying attention before, Jason?
No, not really.
Oh, so, the select committee on special education, is holding, a hearing shortly
Right,
and having the task force present.
okay. I did hear that. I just didn't know if it was an acronym about something that I did not.
Oh, the office of, we were talking about how the financial report. You were saying that tomorrow there's gonna be a financial briefing.
Thanks. Office of Fiscal Analysis is providing a briefing, which will be overall, I assume, about how special ed is funded and connected.
So that they
Well,
have.
in
conjunction
for this funding.
Yes.
So it's a dual.
That's fine, Chris.
Purpose means to me. Okay.
Was that?
For when the
That was-
It won't be just the three tri-chairs. I'm assuming we'll all be, at the meeting with the, or whoever can be with the
Okay.
special ed committee. And I'm assuming that the three committee chairs will be, presenting the findings. No?
I think it's up to the committee, frankly, but what I see is that it's a mandatory obligation for the three of us, and it's a invitation for the rest of you.
Yep.
Okay.
But that's not for tomorrow.
Oh.
Understood?
That's
No,
more.
That's not
Just
wrong.
like to make sense.
No, she understands and she's confused.
I
I generally.
I saw that look.
I thought she was saying that doesn't apply to you.
No, we just understood by, wait, so I mean, yeah, I'm ready to vote on that. That's fine.
And I think, I'm not happy with the lack of boldness of this report, but I think we've produced a solid report. I think we've done a good job putting it together. And I think that, I think we're all to be congratulated for our work, and we should be proud of ourselves.
And I think it's been a long journey.
And no blood has been spilled.
No.
So,
No.
And
Yeah.
it does echo at least two other reports, right, from other groups that are proposing similar things, so. The CCM, right?
The 119K.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the superintendent report also was good.
Well, they're both arguing for substantially more money, and there's zero chance they're gonna get what they asked for.
But if you don't ask, you'll get
No,
less.
that's right, you ask
Yeah.
high,
Yeah.
which is exactly like setting APSEP rates separate.
Maybe I'm
So
not.
should we take a vote?
I'm
Yes,
hoping
we
for
need to
full
take a vote.
funding of excess costs. I'm hoping for full funding of excess costs and probably no change in ECS.
Right.
Although I've been told that they will hold districts harmless.
You're hurting Lisa there.
Yeah,
That's what I've been told, Liz.
that's okay.
Yeah, well.
I mean, full funding access cost is important.
Yep.
Well, can we have a vote to approve the report as modified by Michelle Lovin?
So moved, as read by.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? If you do the chair, the ayes have it, so ayes have it.
So I want to thank our
Yes, thank
tri-chairs
you
and
very much
also
for all your
special
work.
thanks to Brad.
Yeah. All the quiches and coffee cakes, it was well worth it, guys. I'm actually happy. It was a good setting for us.
How old is the average soda brand in the state? I know, but that's.
Oh,
No,
Till the November
it was
meeting.
frozen. I froze it
okay, hopefully.
a couple of weeks
Oh.
ago.
Does anybody want to move to adjourn, or do I want to say?
Couple.
Second. All in favor, aye.
You can stick around as long as you want, take some food.
Thank you very much for all. I think it's hard to say hard work. But we said what people else. We need to be shredded. Wrong stuff. I understood everybody out.
Thank you.
How many times?
Great job.
That'd be wonderful.
So glad you're-
Really think we're getting success in all.
Meeting.
We're saying that
Well, my- Let's get it going.
easier stuff.
Yeah.
Did you see this?
There's only 6 times.
I know that these kinds of.
Third paragraph.
I know.
Yeah, but again, I think I was like, middle of the year, it's the same thing. You send the top out. You get a whole.